Good evening. And thank you, Chad. That was perfect. It really was. Good. So, time. Time is a tool that we can use to change our lives. You know, when we think about time, I have this calendar from outstanding realtor Bev Borman, if you know her. And the calendar is set up linearly. It goes from the past. So if we look at it today, wherever we are, somewhere, that's December. So it goes from the past to the present to the future. It's all linear. And so we've lived by this calendar for so many thousands of years that we've created this linear world of time. And, you know, so we look at things as a result of this, our lives become causal, if you will. So in other words, the abuse as a child causes the trust issues as an adult. Or, you know, because this happened, I act this way in my life now. And we, you know, and again, it's a form of victimhood, but it's what it is. So now let's say a fish. A fish knows its watery world of seaweed and other fishies and things like that, right? So if you came up to the fish and said, fish, how's the water today? The fish would go, what? What's water? Because it doesn't know water, because it doesn't know anything else. Likewise, we are like this with time. We know time as a constant. And, you know, it just is, right? You're born, you grow up, you get married, you have kids, maybe not. You grow old, you transition, and then you do it again, right? You just keep on doing this. And this is what we're programmed into our minds, and this is the way we perceive time. But, you know, even with modern physics, Einstein has shown us that time is not a constant, and that time is not consistent, that time will warp around a black hole or around a planet. Or the faster you go, the slower time actually happens for you. So time is really not a constant. You know, have you ever spent, so bring it more down to the personal level, have you ever spent a day with a loved one, that perfect day where, you know, time seemed to stand still, and yet the day flew by, right? We all have experienced that. Or a different day where everything is going wrong for you, and it's like the day is just dragging on. Or Friday at 3 o'clock, right? You're looking at the clock going, oh man, is it 5 o'clock yet? You know, oh, you know. And so time, in essence, is like economy, right? Is economy real? No. You know, we're just programmed to believe that this green piece of paper is going to buy us, you know, well, not much anymore. Maybe like one of those little candy bars now. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you could get a giant candy bar for a nickel. You know, but that's all, we're programmed into that. We're programmed into it. And likewise, we're programmed into time. It doesn't really exist. So, luckily I'm tall. Ta-da. So I have a model of linear time here, and it's a little small, so I'll explain it. But imagine these two cones. This one represents the future, and it goes on to infinity. This one back here represents the past, and that goes on to infinity. And within each one of those cones is an infinite number of strings, and each one of these strings represents one possible future of you, and each string back here represents one possible past for you. And in the middle is the present, you know, which is why it fits so perfect with Chad's talk. And so as time goes on, and this is linear time, this ring moves from the past to the present. So it's always shrinking the cone down into one possibility, and so that's where we are. So now we live in this, but as our nature, as humans, if we're traveling through time and something really good happens or something really bad happens, we have a tendency to cling to that. Unlike, say, an animal, a dog or a cat. You ever notice two dogs will fight and they'll be fighting for blood, for that bone, and then 10 seconds later they're best friends again, they're playing, they've forgotten it, right? But do humans forget? Well, maybe after a while. But so, and this is both for good and bad. So what happens is, as we move on, we stay here. So this circle moves forward, but we're living in the past now, remembering this beautiful moment or this horrid moment. Oh, why did I say that? Oh my gosh. Oh, and you relive that experience over and over again. In fact, you're actually time traveling because you're traveling back into your past. And you're experiencing that experience 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. And then likewise, you could also be in the future. And in the future, you're worrying about something that's going to happen. What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to lose my job? I heard there's going to be layoffs coming, I'm worried. Oh, no, woe is me, And so we live in the past or live in the future. Now, if we're in the past or in the future, imagine we're on this little thread, which is the reality that I'm experiencing. What can you see? You can only see a few threads around you, right? But when you come back into the present moment, only one thread can fit through here. So from that one point, you can see infinite possibilities, infinite futures for you. It's not black or white, I'm going to get laid off or I'm not going to get laid off. It's, wow, this could be an opportunity for me to open my own business. This could be this could be that. Maybe I could retire early. Suddenly, when we're in the present, we see infinite possibilities of the future, and then we also see infinite possibilities of the past, which, we're so programmed to say, well, it happened already, it's done, I can't change that. And maybe we can't, but in looking at the past, we can change our perception. Okay, so did you ever have a family reunion and everybody talks about something that happened 30 years ago? And everybody says a completely different story. Everybody was there at the same event. But it's like, no, I did that. No, I said that. No, I said that. You didn't say that. I said it, And so we have the opportunity from that point to see infinite pasts. So now we can say, I choose a past that's going to be different. I choose a future that's going to be different. And humans have a special skill that we can actually, if we want to, when we're in that place of presence, that we can actually travel a line to the future. So we could say, we see these infinite possibilities, and we can say, what if this happened? Let me follow that timeline into the future and see what will happen 5 years, 10 years if I make this decision. Or what's going to happen into the future if I make this decision and I follow this other timeline. But what happens? We're always so busy running with our lives. Day to day, we never stop to smell the flowers. So when we're moving fast, it's almost like an analogy would be you're driving along in a pickup truck with all of your baggage in the back, and you decide you want to change your life. Right? But if you're driving 40 miles an hour and you try to turn a corner, what's going to happen? It isn't going to work. You're going to get in an accident, and your change in your life is going to be very unpleasant, or you're going to bounce back to where you were. But if you can slow down the speed, step out of time, if you will, into that point of infinite being at the center. Now, if you're driving a pickup truck at 1 mile an hour and you change to turn the corner and then you speed up again, you're now going in a different direction. So we could do this with our health, we could do this with our life, we can do this with anything that we want to do it with, but we can't do it when we're living this life of just frantic pace. What am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? I'm worried about what's going to happen. Oh, why did they say that to me? Why did I say that? All this stuff in the future and the past, you can't change it from that point of view. Now, you also, it's not about thinking. I love it, what Eckhart Tolle says. He says, if you're speaking or if you're thinking, you can't be in the now. Which is really an interesting thought to think about, right? And then he also says, if you do achieve the now, and you say to yourself, I'm in the now. You're not in the now anymore. Because you thought about it. See, and we're just such creatures of control that we have to control our thinking minds, have to control everything and be in control all the time, right? So when we're thinking, yes, exactly. We're stinking. When we're thinking, we're moving more quickly, and then we can't change our lives. So another way to frame that would be, spiritual, right? Maybe the church calls it spiritual or grace, but they've kind of ruined it a little bit. Or the energetic, to step into the energetic, to step out of the world of thinking and step into the world of being. This is where we come into the energetic world, where time stands still. We come to our point in the middle, and we then can choose any of these infinite possibilities. Say you have a terminal illness, and somebody says to you, well, you're just thinking that. Just think yourself healthy. And you want to punch them, right? You're like, I don't think so. And I believe that's where there's a lot of confusion, and that, because thinking is not where the energy comes from. The energy, the source, God, if you will, comes from the other side of our emotions. And that's where the being comes from. So you have to walk through those emotions to get to that being. But if you're suppressing them and not dealing with them, it's going to be kind of hard to go through them because you don't even acknowledge that they're there. So to that end, it's important to work on that too from a more long-term point of view. But from a short-term point of view, meditation, yoga, breath work, anything like that can bring you closer to this point where you have the ability to change things. So now we're going to do just a quick exercise. It'll be very easy. And what we're going to do is, I love this one because, we kind of talks about where we source from, right? So when you walk in the room, do you look at it, you see the walls, you see, the flags are moved over there and all that. But how many walked into the room and looked at the air in the room? Or when you're listening to my words, don't listen to my words. Listen to the silence between the words. That's the true reading between the lines, if you will, to listen to the silence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring these, and I want everybody to just close your eyes and get comfortable. And I want you to just follow the sound into the silence. This is kind of an interesting way to step into the now, because just try to listen to the sound as far as you can, with no thinking and just being, just hearing the sound. This is one way that time is a tool that you can use to change your life. So there's many paths to get here. And it's for up to each of us to find our own path. My way is one way. You may have a different way. I'm kind of more of the geeky type. Engineer trained. I like to understand the physics and all that kind of stuff. But maybe somebody else doesn't have a propensity to that. Your way is different. So it's up to each of us to find our own way to come to this point. But it's always there and it's always available to us, which is just a wonderful thing. So when you think about it, the Mayan calendar, they didn't have linear time. Look at that, how our calendar is different than their calendar. Our calendar is linear. Their calendar is circular. So perhaps when they said December 21st, 2012 was the end of time as we know it, everybody thought it was the end of the world and built bomb shelters and whatever else and communes and things, which is fine. But perhaps the end of time as we know it is the transition as we progress out of linear time into circular time. Okay, and because this is the way the Mayans lived. This is the way they all lived. They didn't think of life as we think of life. They thought of life as circular. So now here's a different model of circular time. So in circular time, time flows, the past and the present all flow into one. So if you took this linear calendar, or even this linear model, and took it and brought it around on itself into a circle, now we can experience circular time. In circular time, we're always in the present moment. In circular time, all those infinite possibilities that are happening, there is no past or future. There's just infinite possibilities, and we see every one of them at every moment in time. In circular time, the energy of our youth is there to provide us and nourish us when we reach the golden years. In circular time, the wisdom of the golden years is there to guide us when we're crazy, energetic youths, right? So, in circular time, we age differently. We stay younger longer. We die differently. We experience life differently. We experience more joy. Because there is no, I was traumatized as a child, therefore I have trust issues now. Because there is no past. It's all blended into one beautiful moment of central time, of circular time. So with that, time is a tool that we can use to change our lives. Thank you. And just as Michael said earlier, on February, whatever it is, 24th, I'm going to be doing a workshop where we will be tapping into our linear timeline, into our lineage, and then we will be taking that timeline and turning it into circular time. So everyone will have the opportunity to experience circular time as opposed to linear time. So it should be fun. It'll be a fun afternoon. Yes, Nancy?
Is anybody working on circular time? Any scientists or?
There's two people in Mayan area that have worked on it for years. They have come up with different answers. But
It'd be kind of fun to try it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, and again, we have to remember, though, that a scientist will never find circular time necessarily because it's outside of the range of thought, as I was talking about earlier. So if you think about it, then you're not in it. So it's a state of being as opposed to a scientific calculation that you could figure out. But you can still think and do scientific calculations while you're in it. But so, it would be, like science maybe trying to measure perception, right? How could they measure what you're perceiving right now versus what I'm perceiving right now? Yeah, John.
See, what makes the concept of circular different from nirvana or the lack of conflict?
Well, I think it's the same. I think it's one and the same. I think it's what Eckhart Tolle talks about when he talks about the power of now, which I've listened to his books and stuff probably hundreds of times, and but because I'm trying to think about it, right? If you just be, then you can access that point. So yeah.
It's just an observation, but what I try to find interesting is I look at this clock and it's a circle. I look at a calendar and it's a line. I look at that and it's a circle. So did that come first or the calendar? So that's circular, measuring each day, but then all of a sudden then it becomes linear.
Right. Well, I think they had sundials a long time ago, so which would have been a circle, which would have been based on circular time, right? And so the clock grew out of that, right? And but people probably in the Western world couldn't understand circular time, so they made a calendar that was something they could understand, the linear time calendar with past, present, and future.
And when was that? When did that start?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do anything they put in front of us.
Maybe.
Linear.
Their calendars were dated back to around 2000 BC, the straight line calendars.
Okay.
But your Mayan calendar, that's where it dates back to 26,000 years ago.
Right.
Okay, and December 21st of 2012 was nothing more than the birth of the new sun. Okay, that's all it was. I mean, the sun, as far as the Mayans were concerned, was going to die that day, and a new sun was going to be born. That's all. That was nothing about the end of the world, or nothing about that. But again, you guys took it. Do what you want with it.
And something I heard that was funny about that was maybe about a year before that they actually found out that there was a mistake in the calculation and the actual date was in May. But because everybody was so set on December 21st, they just kept it quiet. So I've heard. Yeah. John?
The actual long count dates back to about 13,000 years.
Yeah.
The mistake that was made was like I said, it was done in translation.
Yeah, it was our mistake, not theirs.
Because, the actual long count.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not a student of that, okay, but I was with the Mayans for about 6 or 7 months. So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you should come up and do a talk one of these Sundays. We'd love to hear it. Okay. We had I think John had his hand up first.
Look at the first symbol with the two cones out to the image, and the second symbol with that circular calendar. And I'm saying to myself, circular calendar presumes motion, circle, direction, whereas the first symbol, the two cones opposite each other, could be curved and become the infinity symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So energy moves through the infinity symbol at a very high speed. Where's the start, where's the stop, somewhere there's the center. So one circular time path imposes upon me motion. Well, if there is motion in the first diagram, you take the infinity symbol, and if you're at 186,000 miles per hour per second, or miles per second speed of light, where's the time?
Mm-hmm. There is no time, right?
There is no time because you're looping.
Yeah.
The one first diagram and the second is for me now, kind of.
Yeah. Perfect.
Or, yeah, when we get stuck on this consciousness, we're going to loop solve it. Like in the physical, we're in a loop.
Yeah, I think we're
Mm-hmm.
Always
kind of
shift.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we're either living in the past or worrying about the future. Yeah. Yeah. Pete, did you?
Just the proof of time travel. We do time travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Einstein, it's true, right? We do time travel.
I believe we do. I believe we time travel energetically. I believe that's what psychic stuff is. You're reading the emotional energy that's coming through time, to say, something, and the more extreme the emotional experience, the louder it is, if you will, and easier to pick up on, through time. So another example that time is not really there. It's just it's all man-made, like the dollar. It's all man-made, human-made. Yes.
I don't expect that you know the answer to this. I don't want to put you on the spot. But, you hear about traveling into the deep outer space. The farther you go, you don't age. Now, you're moving, okay? You're in a space capsule and you're moving, but you're not aging. What is that all about?
Well, so they say that if you're going like at really fast in a time capsule or in a space capsule, that maybe a year would travel past for you, and you would come back, and 100 years would have passed because you're moving faster than the other people were. So that's just another example that time is not linear. It's not what we think it is. That it's something else. But we're like that fish in the water, right? What's water? What's time, right? It's just so inbred into us that we don't perceive another way, that there could be another way, but there is other ways.
From nowhere to now here.
There you go.
From N-O-W-G-R-E to now here. N-O-W-G-R-E.
There you go. Just move the letters a little. There you go. Good. Great. Yeah, LJ.
Just one more thing, too. In the circular time process, let's go that way, 2015 or 2012 was interesting because a portal, which is of circular time, opened North America for the first time for life forms to come in, especially animals.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to still live in circular time.
Yeah, yeah. And animals live in circular time, I believe. Yeah, yeah.
Just live with one, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Great. All right. Very good. Thank you, everyone, for listening.